Stand by. Good day and welcome to the webcast, The Heartbleed Bug, How to Protect Your Business. I would like to hand the floor over to our speaker, Jeff Barto, Trust Advocate. Jeff, please go ahead.
Why, thank you, Orlando. Hello and welcome to everybody who has joined us today, wherever you are around the world, from the mountains to the prairies, from sea to shining sea, and everywhere in between and beyond. I really appreciate you taking time in your day today and for joining your colleagues in participating in our discussion. My name is Jeff Barto and I'm your host. I'm a Trust Advocate here at Symantec. It is our duty to help you put security first by keeping you up to speed on what's new and what's now in protection and trust. It is my duty to help you receive the maximum value for your investment and for your trust in us, as well as point out how your organization and you can benefit from all Symantec can offer you. I want to point out a couple things here. I'm not a salesperson. I don't carry a quota. However, I am going to be talking quite a bit about the capabilities of a few of our products in this presentation. And I'm going to do so because I am passionate about driving and inspiring fundamental trust within IT and IS and on a very public internet. Symantec has some great tools for your organization and you can use these to establish and project security and trust within as well as beyond your environment. I firmly believe that we are all in this together. So because it's important to experience multiple points of view and communication styles, later in the presentation you just might hear from any number of my co-hosts and cohorts on the Symantec team, and I will tee them up as needed. So just in case the voice changes away from my own, I wanted you to be ready for it. I also want to let you know that there's a couple points where I'm going to get on the soapbox about a couple things that I am passionate about. I mean, I'm passionate about this whole thing, but there's a couple things that will come up, and I'll note those so you know, okay, Jeff's getting on a soapbox at this point. Please also note that when I say we are in this together, this also includes you. Your perspective is quite valued and important to us. We want to hear from you. So please note, on the right-hand side of your screen, you have poll questions. We're going to close those polls towards the end of today's discussion, but please do feel free, please feel welcome to answer those poll questions. We want to hear from you and your points of view, especially on these matters as it is in regard to Heartbleed. Also, as we roll through the discussion today, pose questions for us. There is a Q&A panel off to the right too. If we have time and we have critical mass today, we will handle those questions at the end of our time together or by email after we conclude. Either way, we're going to get to it. And finally, as you haven't noticed by now, I tend to get really pumped up and start rolling like a freight train. So if you need time to digest this information, or you need to hear it a second time, or you want to share this with your peers, we are going to display contact information prominently at the end of the presentation. In the meantime, we are recording this presentation. We are indeed. You can get to a link to the recording quite soon. You can also download a copy of this presentation so you can see it visually separately from this. So, with all that housekeeping out of the way, let's dive right in. So let's go back. Let's jump in our little time machines here and go back just a few weeks ago when a team of security researchers announced the discovery of a critical vulnerability found in certain versions of OpenSSL, and they called it Heartbleed. Okay, so I'm actually going to switch forward one slide in the deck here because I want to talk just a bit about OpenSSL. OpenSSL, since that's really at the crux of where the vulnerability lies, is an open source cryptographic software library. Okay, so it is both open source, but it's also widely used. Okay, you see OpenSSL used often in web servers like Apache and Nginx, but it's also used in broader contexts like operating systems and toolkits and so forth. So despite that there on this slide, there's a flavor that this is about web servers, just to put a stake in the ground here, while more than half of all web servers out there run OpenSSL, to assume that OpenSSL is only used with web servers and therefore only web servers are vulnerable to Heartbleed, that's a bad assumption to make. You really want to think more broadly than that, which I assure you will tee up much of the discussion later, so stay tuned for that. Meantime, we are still in our time machines here. We're still in time travel. So I want to go back to the previous slide. We're going to go back here. Back on April 7th, certain researchers revealed that there's a bug in some OpenSSL functionality called the heartbeat. Okay, and exploiting this heartbeat could expose sensitive data from an affected server's memory. So what kind of sensitive data? Consider what goes through a server's mind, so to speak, in terms of encryption. Okay, what's it working on to encrypt? For instance, things like the SSL session key in use, or the private key of the SSL certificate on the web server, or other sensitive data like logins and passwords which were recently processed. Okay, that's enough of a heartache right there, no pun intended, but what's worse, if worse is possible here, is that this information is constantly rolling through the server's mind and updated, so to speak, as things pass through the server's memory. So someone who can read the server's mind simply needs to check back frequently and repetitively, and they could pretty quickly build a comprehensive view of what that server is up to cryptographically and encryption, in speaking in terms of encryption. Now, the April 7th date for Heartbleed was merely the date when the vulnerability was announced. The vulnerability has actually existed in production, so to speak. I mean, it is open source, but in production since just around the new year in 2012. So egad, that means that the vulnerability existed in widespread use for over 2 years before it was revealed to the public. Okay, so let's talk about that a little more. And I want to touch a little more about what the heartbeat aspect actually means, because it's key to understanding how Heartbleed works, and also key to understanding why the bug is actually named Heartbleed. So SSL uses what's called a heartbeat, and it's a handy method of pinging a web server in order to keep an encrypted session alive. You want this pulse, this heartbeat, to be happening when, for example, you're checking your messages in Gmail or you're tweeting away at Twitter, so that the encrypted session that you're using between you and that site doesn't need to constantly be restarted or reestablished. It's kept alive. Okay, that's a great thing. That's what heartbeats tend to do. Heartbleed makes this process vulnerable to attack because an attacker can exploit the heartbeat by sending a request to the server, running a buggy version of OpenSSL, and simply asking for what's in the server's memory at the given time. Okay, so dutifully the server does what it's told, and an affected vulnerable web server will comply to the request, send back up to 64K of data from its memory. If a large packet of information is sent to the server to sustain the session, the server, in turn, will attempt to match the size of the large packet by relaying all the data it can gather. And that's where things get real messy real fast, because that data can include juicy bits like the server's private key and user passwords from recent logins and so forth, stuff I mentioned before. Okay, juicy bits, obviously I say that lightly, but you really don't want this stuff, you don't want your server just willy-nilly letting go of this. And that's at the core of the vulnerability. And to the point of what I'm displaying now on screen, if I've completely gone over your head and you need it portrayed in a more matter-of-fact way, or if you simply like to revel in the geeky sarcasm of the situation, please go over to visit Randall Patrick Monroe's site at xkcd.com, look up Cartoon 1354, and you'll see it in its simple glory there. But that's really the Heartbleed functionality in OpenSSL is at the core of the problem here, and how that can be exploited. Okay, so moving on, we're in our time travel capsule again. Around March 21st, this guy named Neil Maida over at Google Security officially discovered the Heartbleed vulnerability. He gets credit. Next morning, Google issues a patch on their servers and informed, quote, select companies, unquote, of the vulnerability, not to be derailed by its coincidence with April Fool's Day. On April 1st, the OpenSSL team itself was notified of the bug. And then very quickly, a day later, the bug was independently discovered by Codenomicon, which is a cybersecurity company in Finland. Next thing you know, there's a name, there's a logo, there's a Heartbleed domain, and even a very nice looking website over at heartbleed.com. Okay, so advancing forward in time here, not to miss out on the opportunity, in no time, both miscreants and bad actors jumped into action. The Canada Revenue Agency learned it was victim to a data breach in which the social insurance numbers of about 900 Canadian taxpayers were leaked. How were they leaked? Someone allegedly exploited the Heartbleed vulnerability. As a result, the Canada Revenue Agency was forced to shut down its website, a government site shutting down because of the Heartbleed vulnerability, albeit temporarily, but to prevent further theft of sensitive personal information. So this led to an arrest by the RCMP of a 19-year-old named Stephen Arturo Solis Reyes at his home in London, Ontario, California. Didn't stop there, though. Next thing you know, parenting website Mumsnet has said that users' data has been stolen by hackers exploiting Heartbleed. The site's founder, her name is Justine Roberts, said in a statement that a recommended fix was applied immediately after the bug was discovered last week. However, she said that there was no way of knowing how many users had already been affected by the security breach. I slowed down on that point for purpose. That's key to the awful nature about Heartbleed. In many cases, evidence of an exploit or attack might simply not exist. No fingerprints, no smoking gun. Ms. Roberts said herself, I'm quoting here, "We have no way of knowing which or how many accounts were affected, but we have advised users to change their passwords." That's pretty scary indeed. We're talking so far about sites and users. Let's talk about elsewhere in the Heartbleed ecosystem, so to speak. Apologize in advance here for the pun, but heartache over Heartbleed isn't just localized to the consumers and the website operators. Some security firms themselves are also feeling the impact, and it works like this. To remediate a server's Heartbleed vulnerability, the organization which owns the SSL certificate in use must replace and revoke that server's SSL certificate. Okay? Now, revocation is almost towards the end of several previous steps. We're going to talk about those in a few minutes. Don't worry about that for now. However, there's a lot of affected servers out there. Therefore, there will be a lot of certificates needing revocation. And for the CAs, or certification authorities, these are SSL providers. We here in the business call them CAs, but SSL providers must track and report all those revocations. And that's going to be a lot of revocations. So the CAs, SSL providers, track and report revocations through batch posts of things called certificate revocation lists, or CRLs. They are what they're named, certificate revocation lists. These are all the certificates that we, as a given CA, have revoked. Okay, there's also a real-time lookup method called Online Certificate Status Protocol. You might hear the acronym bandied about OCSP. In either case, the more revocations that the CA has to report, the larger that certificate revocation list is going to be. That takes precious time to download the CRL and parse the CRL to see if a given site that you're visiting is on the list. And that precious time where you multiply several things together, the size of the CRL in bytes, the number of lines in the CRL that would have to, the browser would have to parse through to see if is this site on the list, times the number of requests for it, ta-da, you are at performance problems real fast for CAs, which some CAs weren't ready for in the spike of revocation traffic. Okay, Wired Magazine has reported that the performance hit here is not just computational, but it's monetary, and that hurts. Okay, that hurts all of us as businesses. That figure that's on screen just includes bandwidth costs. It doesn't take into account the material impact on visitors to a website which uses SSL certificates from an overburdened CA. Someone who's cruising around there on the bottom of that yellow line, but not ready for that huge spike. And visitors to sites protected by SSL certificates from those CAs will feel the performance impact in real time. the moment they go to that site and start to use that site over SSL. And those users are just moments of impatience away from clicking away to a competing site which could be performing better. Okay, there's material risk here, not only in a secrecy sense, but also in a business sense. Ironically, it tends to be bargain price SSL vendors who sell SSL as a commodity, which are suffering the most from this price versus performance trap. And that's effectively the gamble that an organization makes when it's selecting a lower price CA. Again, I'm trying to call it for what it is. Those CAs perform best when their commodity status is steady. But when something interrupts that, bad things happen, like the performance hit demonstrated here. This is factual and real. Or through another vector where a low-price CA is now charging for replacements. Or where a small, non-scalable CA doesn't have the authentication and operational staff, that is people, employees, to handle the increased strain. Cloudflare says it themselves. I'm quoting Cloudflare. Many CAs are not set up to be able to handle this increased load. Revoking SSL certificates threatens to create a sort of denial of service attack on their own infrastructures. Yikes. Okay, so I want to tip the hat here. First of all, customers of the Symantec CAs have largely not seen these problems. We issue our certificates from multiple routes and intermediates as a best practice. No CRL gets too big as a result. We have multiple CRL distribution points, multiple OCSP responders around the world. I know I'm getting a little technical here, but this is part of the value prop. We've made the investment to scale beyond current necessity, and we've built in layers of infrastructural redundancy, so handling even sustained spikes in traffic, not just momentary spikes, but spikes that continue, is something that we just comparatively can just take in stride here at Symantec. Moreover, we offer free replacements of SSL certificates. This is at the same time both leading by example and demonstrating that effectively you get what you pay for with SSL certificates. It is too bad that it takes a widespread urgency like Heartbleed to materially demonstrate that. But for those of you who put security first, a tip of the hat for you. You view security and trust as investments. In my humble opinion, you confirm that today and since Heartbleed became real, you are the heroes in your organization for making the right choice and putting security first. So a tip of the hat to you. I'm very proud of you for doing so. Thank you for investing in security and trust. Okay. I want to switch gears. I want to get into the basic necessities for Heartbleed response in an organizational environment, regardless of size, smallest to largest, enterprises all the way down to Soho. But before we do that, I want to do a quick air check here. This is Symantec's presentation on how to protect your business in response to the Heartbleed bug. I am Jeff Barto, your host. We are about 21 minutes in. I want to remind you that we value your input, so please participate through the poll questions at the right side of your console. Feel free to pose any questions for us. Housekeeping out of the way. Effectively, there are 3 sequential phases of response, and there are steps to take within each phase. Not surprisingly, those 3 steps are displayed on screen. I'm going to demonstrate the tools available to Symantec customers which can help in each phase. Again, the idea here is that this isn't a sales pitch. Many of you already own these products. The point here is to elevate these by example together to help you understand what to do in your own environment using Symantec tools to highlight each step in your Heartbleed response. Okay, so we're going to first talk about the discovery aspect. That is finding where the vulnerability exists in your environment. We're going to talk a little about some Symantec products called Control Compliance Suite, some features on our SSL certificates, another product called Certificate Intelligence Center. Let's go there. Okay, when you're finding out whether or where you have a vulnerability due to this buggy version of OpenSSL, which reveals the Heartbleed bug, you want to first detect which servers are using OpenSSL. Okay, our Control Compliance Suite product is a modular solution. It's comprised of different components which can help you do just that. The components are fully interoperable. They're either available separately or part of a suite, but chief among these for detecting Heartbleed vulnerability is something called the CCS Standards Manager. You would use this tool to perform a discovery scan of your network and your assets. Okay, you're going to be looking for things and detecting unauthorized versus authorized hardware, or building an inventory which includes whether and where OpenSSL is installed, and performing an evaluation to detect if an quote-unquote at-risk installation of OpenSSL exists on any given asset. And then you can scan that asset for vulnerabilities. That is one of the 4 components here, CCS Standards Manager. Okay, and the other 4 parts here also can play a role in Heartbleed response. Okay, again, calling them out to demonstrate the points that you would need to take and the steps that you would need to take. Next in the chain here is the CCS Vulnerability Manager. This performs an end-to-end vulnerability assessment of web apps and databases and servers and network devices. It's going to give you a single view of security threats across your entire IT infrastructure, regardless of size. So you're going to use this, or you can use this, to address Heartbleed by running authenticated checks for your supported Linux platforms. Remember the servers that are most often affected here, as well as platform-independent remote checks. You could also test for other things, checking for systems defenses and assessing the impact of Heartbleed in your environments. Okay, so 2 great tastes tend to taste great together for those of you of a certain age. You'll remember that commercial. The Asset Discovery and Security Configuration Assessment capabilities of CCS Standards Manager actually complement the findings and analysis reported by the CCS Vulnerability Manager. And as we say in some of those old commercials, but wait, there's more. There's something that we call the Vendor Risk Manager, and what this does is it conveys the impact of IT risk in business-relevant terms. So you can identify yourself, but also elsewhere in the organization, the most critical third-party partners used in your environment. Then programmatically, you can reach out to determine whether any of these partners are vulnerable to Heartbleed using both surveys and Veracode reports for validation. Okay, here comes a pretty picture. It all comes together in the 4th component, which is CCS Risk Manager. This ties the whole thing together, all the relevant information from the Standards Manager, Vulnerability Manager, Vendor Risk Manager. Really, this helps to identify the most business-critical assets that are exposed to Heartbleed. It's also going to make recommendations on how best to prioritize the remediation efforts. Now, that's just one idea, one tool for assessing risk while detecting vulnerability. I'm going to point out, switch gears, different products. Here's what else you can do. Many customers are not aware that a good number of our SSL certificates themselves come with a layer of free vulnerability assessment. It's free with purchase. You already got it. Okay, those are specifically the SSL certificates in our premium and extended validation, or EV, SSL product lines. They've all got the ability to perform a vulnerability assessment on your site, except not from looking inward across the network, but from coming in outwardly, just like someone trying to budge their way into your network would do. Okay, this vulnerability assessment comes paired with malware scanning. These are, again, both free with purchase of premium and EVSSL certificates. These certificates, you might also know them by their other names, like Secure Site Pro, Secure Site with EV, and Secure Site Pro with EV. But frankly, regardless of their names, if you've got these products, please activate and deploy these vulnerability assessment services and the malware scanning services. If you've got them, there's really no reason to. And again, they're free with purchase, so if you got them, use them. Okay, somewhat related to SSL, but again, the idea of how to detect Heartbleed and tools that you can use. A third method of Heartbleed vulnerability detection is to use tools which discover SSL certificates themselves, and in the process detects whether OpenSSL is actually in use on those servers. where those certificates reside. We have a product called Certificate Intelligence Center, which does exactly that. It effectively bolts onto our managed PKI for SSL offering. That is our management console for SSL certificates. That is enterprise strength and, frankly, industry standard. You can use Certificate Intelligence Center, or CIC, to quickly and rather non-impactfully scan any or all of your environment, searching for all the SSL certificates in use. What's especially cool about CIC is that it finds SSL certificates from any vendor or source. That's whether it's from us or our competitors, whether it's active or expired, whether they're commercially available certificates, or whether you rolled your own, whether they're self-signed certificates. It finds all SSL. The cool thing that goes along with that, skipping a second here, is that when CIC builds this snapshot of your SSL inventory, it's going to reveal which servers use OpenSSL. Actively using OpenSSL demonstrated through use of certificates. Hugely valuable here because we're getting at the point where the problem exists. Okay, so it's going to show its reports in gory textual detail if you're into that, or the efficient charts and graphs that are beloved by executives and people whose titles acronyms begin with C. But from there, as with CCS and the vulnerability assessment tools I mentioned earlier, whatever you have elsewhere in your environment, you have a much more focused view on where Heartbleed vulnerability can or does exist, using these products as a model of how and where to go look. So with that, you are ready to jump into the next phase of action. As a time check, we are exactly halfway through our time together here. I want to say that this next step is remediation. This is the phase of response where you want to resolve and recover from any instances of Heartbleed vulnerability. Okay. Again, I'm going to use Symantec tools where appropriate. I'm going to highlight the kind of activity you want to undertake. Things like identifying domains and patching and recompiling. And we're going to get through all this stuff, trust me. But there's going to be, at the end of this, is going to come one of those soapbox moments I mentioned earlier. I want to do a quick reminder that this is Symantec's presentation on how to protect your business in response to the Heartbleed bug. If you haven't done so, please participate in the Q&A and the polls. Those are on the right-hand side of your screen, so have at it. Let's go into this phase of remediation. Okay, so you know where you might have a vulnerability. You want to go double check things. The first step in the remediation phase is to check your domains by using our SSL toolbox. This is a free tool. It's available to you, frankly, available to anybody, but it's available right now. It has been for years. It's available right now regardless of what you have or haven't purchased. There's no limits, there's no signups, there's no ads. This is a free lunch, baby, so to speak. Now, the URL isn't a pleasant one. You see it there on the screen. Please note it. It's there if you want to scribble real fast. You want to screen cap this page if you must, although to be honest, I'm going to recap all of these URLs and links at the end of the presentation in case you want to hold off until then and just mind this instead of scribbling furiously away. By the way, the SSL Toolbox is a tool that you can use in multiple steps during remediation. So once you visit it, bookmark it right away because chances are you can come back to it. It's a good resource to deploy and use, especially since it's free. Okay, so you've found which servers which could be vulnerable. You've gone and used the SSL toolbox to test all of the different IP addresses or FQDNs or common names or domain names associated with that. Once you've confirmed which of your servers is or are vulnerable, the next steps are pretty logical. Okay, start with the problem itself. You want to start with fixing the OpenSSL problem. You're effectively looking at three main options. I've noted them here in sub-bullet. First in the list, you can roll back. You can go back to a previous version of OpenSSL, something before version 1.0.1, an older version which doesn't have the vulnerability. Second one is that you can update. You can update OpenSSL to version 1.0.1G, G like go, like green. That is where the patch has been applied to OpenSSL itself. Or third, you can just recompile your existing version of OpenSSL without the Heartbleed extension. You just sidestep the problem entirely. Each one of these is going to either fix or, as I mentioned, sidestep the Heartbleed vulnerability. So once you've done the appropriate action for each of your affected servers, each server might be different, and you've reinitiated services on that server. Whew, I'm mixing servers and services. Once you've reinitiated services on those servers, you want to use the SSL toolbox again. Okay, you're going to keep on coming back here to verify that your fixes were successful. Okay, remember this will tell you right away if you're doing well, and hopefully you are. Okay, so now comes the step in remediation where SSL certificates themselves come into play, and that is replacing certificates. It's pretty critical that you replace SSL certificates that were created and used on vulnerable versions of OpenSSL. We know that. That's no duh. However, it is equally critical that those certificates be generated from new key pairs. I'm being very deliberate here because, after all, one of the things that can be exposed in that 64K data dump that the server is willing to hand to anybody is your private key. So you absolutely, positively want to create a new key pair after you've remediated the problem with OpenSSL itself. Capiche? Okay, so that said, on your remediated servers, create a new private key, destroy your old key pairs before generating a new certificate signing request. That CSR, that certificate signing request, is usually the first step in going and getting a replacement certificate. I'm being deliberate here because a lot of people have generated new CSRs from old key pairs, thinking that the problem was resolved, but it isn't. Again, a Heartbleed exploit may have exposed your private key, so you really need to generate a new key pair. And you're going to use that new key pair to generate the CSR, which in turn gets generated into your new certificate by your CA, us. Of course, once you get the replacement certificates, you want to install them. Don't forget that step. Here's a couple pro tips for you. First of all, this is a good opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. Okay, there's this migration coming up where the industry is moving away from the SHA-1 hashing algorithm. This is a great time to just move to SHA-2 right now. If you haven't upgraded your server to utilize the soon-to-be minimum standard of SHA-2, now's a great time to do so. Microsoft is going to be blocking the use of the SHA-1 hashing algorithm after the 1st of January in 2017. So again, it's a good time to kill two birds with one stone by moving to SHA-2 now. This is going to avoid you having to do another certificate replacement in the future when SHA-1's deprecation is enforced by Microsoft. Okay, second pro tip. If you use our Secure Site Pro, Secure Site EV, Secure Site Pro with EV, Standard EV, Premium EV SSL, all the things that come with the vulnerability assessment for free, use it. You want to make sure that you use what comes to you for free with purchase of those products to double check your work. Okay, get multiple flavors of double checking your work here. Obviously, if you need any technical help or support, you could always reach out to our knowledge base article on the whole dealio. It is simple. It's symantec.com/heartbleed. It's there in the dead middle of the screen. That's an easy link to remember and to go to for help and support. Okay, so here we are again. You've on the SSL toolbox, you've replaced the keys, you've replaced the certificates, you've installed those new certificates. Again, go back to the toolbox, check your work, make sure the new certificates are installed properly. You can use the toolbox to ensure that each new certificate is properly installed and properly chained. Chaining errors tend to be one of the top 2 support drivers anyway, so again, killing multiple birds with a single stone. Okay, you're not done with remediation. Remember, you got some certs out there, SSL certificates out there, that need to be taken care of. They were generated with your old keys. So you really want to nuke those certificates that you replaced, okay, the old ones, if that wasn't done automatically by your CA. So after you've used the free SSL toolbox to verify that your remediation steps were successful, go revoke any certificates that were replaced. The old ones, not the new ones. Okay, just make sure, but you want to get rid of those old ones and revoke them. Okay, that's going to add them to the CRLs, our certificate revocation list, and our OCSP. We're built to handle that. Don't worry about that. You're not going to be causing anybody else or your site visitors problem. But this is going to prevent anyone from taking those old certificates and creating a spoofed version of your site. Okay, so this is really important. Someone can take an unrevoked certificate, which is still valid, and spin up a version of your site using other means which properly validates that it's actually your site when it isn't. So make sure that after you've gone all through the previous steps, you revoke those remaining old certificates that you've replaced. Okay, so again, upon revocation, those deactivated certificates are going to be added to our OCSP responders, our CRLs. I mentioned those earlier, so that if any bad actor decides to use your old certificates nefariously, our OCSP and our CRLs will stop, will notify the requesting browser that the certificates are old, they've been revoked, and throw the necessary warnings to halt any further progress in its tracks. Okay. I said I'm going to get up on a soapbox. This is one of those moments where I'm getting up on the soapbox, so just bear with me on this one. We have been talking a lot about the Heartbleed problem itself. Frankly, we've not been talking enough about what Heartbleed can reveal. Okay, fair enough, Heartbleed can reveal a private key, things about you, your environment, keys to your environment, keys to access, what have you. But it also reveals usernames and passwords. Okay, there was a CIO solution study revealed that about 50% of organizations rely solely on username passwords. And Heartbleed is a wake-up call for those companies. That wake-up call isn't simply because Heartbleed can reveal passwords on your site. It's because Heartbleed could have revealed a user's password on a different site. And that same user might employ that same password on your site, even if you're immune to Heartbleed. Saying otherwise, someone else's vulnerability may result in access to your site. Okay, let's face it, all of us use only a small number of passwords to manage a lot of accounts, just the way things are. Not saying it's good, but what if another company was vulnerable and your username and password was stolen? And what if that username and password is the same one you use to access your corporate account or some other important web app that you use? Okay, this is not just some hypothetical or some FUD that I'm throwing out here. The industry source, the Register, you can go look it up. They did a study that reveals that the average user out there has 5 passwords at any given time, and they use those 5 passwords across 26 different accounts. Okay, you can do the math very quickly in your head that you got a pretty good chance that password one place is used another place. The odds are pretty good that combination is usable elsewhere, especially when the username is an email address. So the solution for this is actually to move beyond passwords into 2-factor authentication methods. Okay, Symantec offers one. It's called VIP, or the Validation and ID Protection Service. This is a second factor so that even if your password is compromised, your account is protected. Okay, there's a saying that goes along with 2-factor authentication or second factor authentication that this is a bolstering of password, because a password is something that you know, but it adds something that you have. And no two people can have that same thing. So even though someone else might know your password, they don't have that extra layer or that second factor of authentication. Okay. Let me switch slides here. Any attacker must not only get through your firewall with your stolen password, but also present a second factor for authentication. So this isn't just the hard token or card token that we've all seen or maybe used ourselves, or like a dork like me, I carry right here on my badge, which spits out a 6-digit security code that's time critical. Okay, those codes expire every 30 seconds. They can only be used once. That makes them very difficult to steal. There's other versions of this and flavors available too. Symantec has evolved the state-of-the-art such that you can enable a mobile device, your own mobile device, with a thing called VIP push. Okay, this is kind of cool. It lets users confirm or deny in real time an authentication attempt with just a push of a button. It knows that you're paired with that smartphone and absolves the 6-digit thing by saying whenever a login is handled, it pushes a notification to your mobile phone and says, do you approve this? And since you're the person holding that phone, you say yes or no. Someone else who doesn't have your phone, again, something you know and something you have, the person who doesn't have your phone can't press yes or no, and therefore they will be blocked. Okay, so whether through a short-lived code or a mobile authentication method, if that second factor is not presented or you decide to deny the authentication attempt, any attacker is locked out. Heartbleed or no Heartbleed. And that's cool, where you could just completely sidestep this risk that's associated with Heartbleed. Okay, so before I move off the soapbox, consider this from the 2013 data breach investigation report, no, not from Symantec, but from Verizon. Okay, they state that 80% of data breaches, 80% of data breaches could have been eliminated with second factor authentication. 80% could have been avoided. Look, think in your history, recent history, of all the big names that have been breached. 80% of them could have been prevented with second factor authentication. The Heartbleed bug makes two-factor authentication's value pretty clear. If you're still relying on just passwords, it's time to heed the alarm bell because it is going off loud and clear. Okay, I'm stepping off this soapbox. Thank you for humoring me. I'm going to move to the last bit here. Before we move on to the last state of Heartbleed response protection, we are in the home stretch of our presentation today on how to protect your business in response to the Heartbleed bug. We have 15 minutes to go, and in those 15 minutes, just towards the end of them, with about a minute or two to go, we're going to close our polls and our Q&A. So be sure that your voice has been heard. You can also ask any questions to which we can respond either live or afterward via email. I am going to try to give you a few minutes back in your day, but I promise you that if you submit questions, we will do our darndest to get back to you either live in the interface right now or afterwards by email. Maybe we'll reach out and contact you. In fact, I'm going to give you some contact means in a minute here. But I digress. Okay, look, the idea behind the protection phase is to reconsider your security stance. Okay, this is a reconsideration of your layers of defense from the standpoint of readiness. And whether that comes in the form of battening down all the hatches or merely reprioritizing security up your list of business priorities, it's a worthwhile thing to look beyond Heartbleed towards what might happen next. And that's really where I'm going to be going here with this idea of protection as part of your response. Be proactive here. That's, boy, if I can modify that slide right now, I would say instead of protect, let's just put proactive. Okay, so for clues, just like I did before, of what's next and what next actually means, we're going to use the typical threat landscape as a model as it applies to what is consistently the weakest point in the chain, and that is the human factor. Us, people, sitting right here at the endpoint, no matter who we are. We are all users at the endpoint at some point during our day, professionally or personally. Okay, so I'm going to illustrate how you can protect your environment and your business and your users in a business environment of any size, enterprise all the way down to the smallest you can get by explaining this again through the lens of one of our products. That product is Symantec Endpoint Protection. I'm calling up this one because it touches the likely places that your environment is going to be exposed to risk. And by mean is going to, I mean right now as well as in the future. Okay, it also provides some key examples of what I referred to earlier as layered defenses. In this case, all the way down towards and at the endpoint. Okay, so again, by using Symantec Endpoint Protection as an example of how to be proactive and protect for the next thing that's coming along, which is indefinable right now, I'm going to show you the tools that we deploy through this product, but also get you an edge towards defining and understanding what could be coming next as it's actually happening. Okay, so Symantec Endpoint Protection is much more than antivirus. Let's not go into this thinking that this is an AV, just an AV product. It's not just antivirus. There's way more to it than that. It does help prevent against Heartbleed. It contains multiple layers of proactive protection. This is to help protect against new and unknown threats. It does so through 5 layers of defense. I'm holding up my hand and showing five fingers here as I've been taught by one of my colleagues. I'm going to talk through these 5 layers moving from left to right as they appear on your screen. Okay. First layer is called Network Threat Protection. This includes firewall and intrusion protection systems, or IPS. And strangely enough, you know, here we are talking about an endpoint product, and this is by definition not at the endpoint, but this primary defense will protect against things like drive-by downloads and social engineering and more. Stopping malware before it reaches the endpoint is way more preferable than identifying a vulnerability that's already been exploited on anybody's system. Okay. Now, specifically for Heartbleed, let's get this Heartbleed focused. The IPS technology, the intrusion prevention technology here at this first layer, specifically detects and blocks attempts to exploit Heartbleed through vulnerable client applications. Okay, so moving on left to right, second layer is file protection. This is what we've all come to know and love as antivirus. It includes antivirus, but it actually goes way beyond that. This is looking for malware and eradicating any of it that's found on a system. You know, unfortunately, many companies leave themselves exposed through the belief that antivirus alone is enough to keep their systems protected. And while antivirus is able to protect users from Trojans and worms and mass malware, it cannot and does not stop targeted attacks, nor advanced persistent threats, known as APTs, and those bad boys are the fastest growing vectors of malware and such. So you need the full protection set to defend against different kinds of malware variants, not just antivirus protection. Okay, and that takes the form of Symantec's Endpoint Protection's 3rd and 4th layers, which is reputation and behavior protection. Okay, so the reputation protection layer is powered by a really geeky cool thing called Symantec Insight. Here's how that works. Symantec sees a lot of bad stuff in the world. We catalog it, we learn from it, we leverage that. We consider it collective wisdom. We see what's going on 244 million systems worldwide. And we've used it to build something called the Global Intelligence Network here at Symantec. And Insight, which is the core of this reputation protection layer, uses that global intelligence. It uses what we call contextual awareness. And what that does is it reduces scan overhead. It identifies the reputation of each file based on where that file has been seen and what it does and how things perform afterwards elsewhere in the world. Okay, we're leveraging our scope, size, and scale here to your benefit, all the way down to the endpoint. This protects against rapidly mutating threats while scanning at-risk files only. Okay, so that also frees up some bandwidth and usage and doesn't clog up the user system. Okay, that is paired up with the 4th thing moving left from left to right called the layer of behavior protection. This is powered by an equally cool thing, I think, called Sonar. Again, this is a leveraging of our experience, our reach. We can conduct real-time behavioral monitoring to catch targeted attacks and unknown threats as they execute. So this isn't just based on signatures. This is based on collective intelligence that we're deploying to your benefit in both terms of reputation protection and behavior protection. Of course, multiple layers of defense. There is a possibility of something getting through, so the last line defense all the way over there on the right is repair and remediation, also known as our power eraser. This is if and only if, of course, some piece of bad stuff is slick enough to get through the 4 layers that precede it, which is pretty unlikely, but we're into multiple layers of defense here. And this guy aggressively removes malware and does so automatically. Customers can scrub away the hard-to-remove infections like they're dirt and you're washing it off at the sink, and get systems back online as quickly as possible. Again, the point of going through all this is not to sell you Symantec endpoint protection, which of course we'd love for you to buy and use. The point here is to demonstrate how a layered defense strategy can be applied anywhere in the organization, whether it's in the server room or out at endpoints. Okay, so by those examples, I hope I've illustrated all the things that you can do and consider in protecting your environment, not just resolving for the Heartbleed matter, but being protective and proactive with an eye towards whatever that it is that's coming next. We value your business here. Okay, we really appreciate that we can help you solve problems and create these layers of defense. Symantec is uniquely positioned to provide a complete security solution that protects organizations from the threats of today, like Heartbleed, and whatever's coming tomorrow. Okay, I promised 2 soapbox moments. We're getting close to the end here. I'm going to wrap up here in a bit. This is the next soapbox moment. Okay, I'm not just concerned about all of us who can and do use Symantec products or work at organizations. Okay, I'm concerned about consumers too. And some of you in the audience might not be a Symantec customer. Many of you are probably looking for ways to project trust and security, especially when people are freaking out when they visit your site, internally or externally. And that's either from an organizational or brand standpoint, but it's in light of Heartbleed. Or if you just want to share something good with friends and family to make sure that personally your friends and family can get above and beyond Heartbleed. Okay, so for that I tossed this guy in. Go to our Norton Brands Safe website, and you can check whether any website, any domain is vulnerable to Heartbleed. Okay, so please, as you go through your day and you look at all the different sites, you visit all the dubs that you type in, and all the shortcuts that you click on, and all the links, and look at all of those URLs and plug in those domains, those fully qualified domain names, as we call it in the SSL world. Plug it into this tool. Okay, this is a free tool through our Norton brand here at Symantec, and share it too. Share this with others. Don't just use this for your own purposes. Share this with friends and family. I did. This is up on my Facebook profile. Okay, I mentioned before, I'm passionate about establishing fundamental trust on the internet, and I want my friends, my family, any followers that I have to benefit from what Symantec does in its role and its mission to protect people and information. Okay, best of all, it's free, it's very consumer friendly. You don't even have to know what SSL means or spells or Heartbleed or any of the facts we've gone over. It doesn't require registration or login, so please use it, share it. We want this to get out there and people to benefit from this. I meant it when I said it earlier that we are all in this together. Okay, so I'm getting off that soapbox, and we are in the home stretch. I do apologize, but looking at time here, we are not going to be able to get to Q&A live. So that said, we're done with the prepared content. Our polls are going to close just in a moment, so please, if you haven't participated in the polls, check in, submit any questions that you want us to answer posthumously. Let me remind you of these available resources. I mentioned them throughout the presentation. I promised to put them on one screen. This isn't the prettiest screen available, but they're all here on one page. So those of you who are old school like me, using a Mac, Command-Shift-3 will screen cap this page. Or those of you on Windows, Alt-Print Screen will put it in the clipboard. You can paste that into Word or email, Paint, or wherever you want to go. But I want you to capture this page. Again, this is available on PDF, so you can get this later. The recording is available, but that's a way to get this page and start socializing this right now, internally and to some degree externally as you want to. Of course, you are always welcome to reach out to us to continue the discussion. We want you to do that. We've got several contact means here. If you're a user of our SSL product or interested in our SSL products and their role in protecting your environment and projecting trust internally and externally, there are contact mechanisms listed there on the left. Contacting your SSL account manager, call, click, or sending us an email. That is for our SSL products. On the right, we have our endpoint environment protection products. And environment, I mean your computing environment, not the Korean movement and such. But there's contact information there too. Contact your account manager. There's a phone number listed there for Seth and the CCS product and VIP, what have you. Also an email address or a web address that you can go to too. Okay, I apologize that we're not able to get to Q&A. Again, if you are old school and you want to screen cap this and not wait for the PDF or the recording, Alt-Print Screen or Command-Shift-3 will do the trick, but we are right up against it. So with that, I want to thank you again for your time and your participation today. We are all in this together. So with that, on behalf of Symantec, working fervently to protect people and information worldwide, I'm Jeff Barto. Good day, goodbye, and please stay safe online.
This concludes today's webcast, The Heartbleed Bug, How to Protect Your Business. Thank you for attending and have a good day.